I'm gonna take over now, and I'm really excited to be here, and I'll tell you a little bit about who I am and what I do. So, my name is Brian Hart. I'm with Smart Living Systems by Line Shipability Consulting, and the question that I get asked all the time is, why are you here? It's a question I ask myself all the time. How did I get here? Right? Always wondering what are we doing with our lives? Where did we get here? And the way I got here is I've been in this field for a little over a decade and a half, working directly with people with disabilities in a bunch of different settings. A lot of my work was out where I'm from in Utah, working with agencies, helping to increase independence of individuals. So I worked in community employment, I worked in community housing, closing of institutional sites. We have two more people.
Yes.
Welcome. Feel free to throw that on the floor if you want. You can't break anything, I promise. Chuck in if you want. So, while you're sitting, you missed it, but you can get introduce yourself. And,
I'm Rose Magnus.
okay,
I'm Lana Patterson.
okay. And are you here because someone that you support is interested in?
I'm in.
You're interested in it. Great. Love your sweater.
Thank you.
That's awesome. So about 4 years ago, I connected with a company in Cincinnati called LAD, and they were looking at how do we change the way we deliver services using technology. What we were looking at 4 years ago is the same problems that we see kind of everywhere, right? More and more people need support, more and more people want support, people want to be independent. They want to live in the community and be independent. And
I got it.
oh, there we go. Oh,
Oops. Betty, can you unmute again and just, you wanna,
we almost had you.
I just might have just messed it up.
All right, Betty, we are so glad you're here.
All right.
We see you. There we go. And we started looking at how do we change the way we deliver services, and I'll talk a little bit about more why. And we found some pretty awesome successes in this over the last few years in helping people be more independent, helping people be bigger parts of their community, and really helping people live in smaller settings just in our world, helping them do that through the use of technology and making sure that while we make all of these changes, all of the things that we've been doing for the last 40 and 50 years don't change. I think what makes me different than anyone else that really looks at how do we use technology to provide services is I come from an agency. We started as an agency. We're not a tech company that developed a technology that's going to help change the way people do services. We were an agency that said, hey, we need to find a way to make change. We looked at what's out there. We put the pieces together. And now when I'm not running an agency in Cincinnati, I come and help other agencies make changes where they're at. One of the things that we think about with Smart Living all the time is we're not coming in to really replace anything. We're not coming in to say, hey, this isn't working, let's stop it and change it. It's how do we take things that have worked for decades and build upon them and help people be more independent. I desperately love the work that I do. I don't know how I got here. I fell backwards into it. There's two paths really to get into this field of work. Either you're smart and you figure out early on what you want to do and you make your career out of it, or you go into a different job that I thought was going to be my career. I hated every second of it and decided I wanted to do something different with my life. I fell backwards into a job working in an agency in Utah. I can't imagine doing anything else. And as I look 10 years down the road, the way we have set up our system is not sustainable. There are more and more people that need supports, and there are not enough people to provide supports. And it has nothing to do with how bad we may be at recruiting or how little we can get reimbursed and can pay people. A lot of it just has to do with there are not enough people to work and provide the support. You know, people will talk in our field all the time about how we have to raise our wage because Target raised their wages. We're competing against Target and movie theaters and stuff for our employees, but in reality, we're competing against the other caregiving fields. We're competing against nursing homes with assisted living, in-home caregiving for people that are aging. And that population is getting larger and larger every year. People that need in-home support that don't have a disability, but are just aging and need more support. And as that population continues to grow, they're going to just start continuing to suck up our employees. And so this idea that we can just hunker down and wait out this staffing incident or crisis we're in is not going to work. We have to change the way we deliver services. And the way we look at it, it doesn't mean that we stop what we're doing and we say, okay, no more in-person care, it's all going to be technology. That doesn't work. There's no way that would work. There is a mix between how do we use technology where it's meaningful, how do we use in-person staff where it's meaningful, how do we ensure high quality training across the board, high value outcomes, and independence is our focus. When you think about what is the goal, what we're doing, we could talk about how we can do more with less staff, we can do more with what we're able to reimburse. The secret in our field is that when costs go up, unlike Target, we can't just raise our prices, we're stuck with whatever Medicaid will give us. So we have to be better at what we do. Using technology allows us to do that. But really, at the end of the day, we are focused really solely on how do we help people be more independent? How do we help people be more inclusive members of society? How does technology play a role in that? And when technology can't play a role in that, how do we make sure when our staff are providing support, which they will still always do, they are doing it with the tools they need, either through technology or other areas. So yes, a little bit about me. I really, again, am excited to be here. I love talking with parent groups. I look forward to the questions you may have. I hope you guys came with questions, concerns. If you didn't, I will give you questions other people have asked me and then answer them. That will be very easy for me because I wrote the questions that I will then answer for myself. So please do not hesitate. Also, don't feel like this is your only shot. If you can't think of a question now or something comes up later, or like tomorrow, you're like, I don't like what they said about this. I want to learn more about it. Reach out. This is a new project and a new program for Easter Seals and what they're stepping into in terms of technology enabled supports. Even though I've been doing it for 4 years, it's still pretty new when you think about the spectrum of how long services have been delivered. But we're seeing some really cool stuff. It's research back and we'll talk more about that. So let's jump into it. So this is just a little agenda, welcome introductions, check, that's done. Now we'll talk about what is smart living, what is remote supports, what do those terms actually mean? What should you guys expect, or what should people that are part of the project or that choose to be a part of it expect from remote supports? How does it all work? We'll talk about some technology. How does it work? What are some success stories that we've seen? Where are areas where we like to use technology? Where are areas where we're never going to use technology? Again, there are some things that a robot or a piece of technology just cannot do. I don't care what any tech pro will tell you, there are limits to what technology can do. So we'll talk about that and then we'll have time for questions. So this is the question that I get asked more than anything else. Why are we doing this now? The reason I got asked for it in the beginning is we started this project in 2019 and then got it really started up and running. We were really excited to really embark on this new way of services. And then we had a worldwide pandemic and we were told over and over again, hey, you should put this on the back burner. There are more important things to worry about right now. Why are you continuing down this road? And the reason we continued is because these things that we're going to talk about in this circle have not changed. I talked about our current needs are unmet, right? I mean, there is a wait list, right? We have wait list here. Every state has a wait list. In Ohio, where the agency that I run is at, we have a wait list of about 40,000 people. It got so large, they stopped keeping a wait list. So now it's just like, well, I guess if you can have an emergency big enough that someone will hear you, you'll get services because they're triaging to the point now they'll never get to people on the wait list. There are huge unmet needs. Needs for services are increasing, right? More people are getting diagnosed with disabilities, partly because we are better at it, but also because the stigma is lower, so people are out there more, and also people are aging and staying alive longer that have a disability. So this generation that we have right now is going to outlive their parents at a larger rate than the one before that. And the next one, the larger rate before that. We are getting better at making sure people can live longer, healthier lives. It's an amazing thing, this amazing problem that we have. It's like, okay, so how do we solve for that? I met with the treasurer of the state of Ohio one time, and he told me that when they project out, 10 years in advance of what is it going to cost us to run Medicaid services for 10 years. He said, hey, I got to let you in on something. We did not expect people with disabilities to live as long as they were, even 5 years ago. We have to recalculate everything because of this amazing wonders of technology and medical care that have helped us ensure people can live longer, typical lives. We also know inefficiencies exist. Anyone that's delivered services, received services, know there are plenty of times when you're sitting there looking at your staff in your house, thinking, why are you here? And they're looking at you thinking, why am I here? Oftentimes the reason staff are there is in case something happens, right? We want staff there in case something happens or in the event that something happens. It's not super efficient. There are also areas of what staff do that is highly valuable that sometimes is also inefficient. We spend a lot of our day doing medication passes. And how that works, if you're not aware of this, little again behind the scenes, we're gonna let you know a lot of secrets tonight, is staff have a tackle box usually full of medications, a lot of sites, and they punch them out of that little packets, they put them in a cup and hand them to someone. And that is wrought with errors, right? There are medication errors almost every single day. In my agency, we serve 700 people. We have a medication error every single day. Either someone's given the wrong dose, the wrong time, didn't document right, just people passing medicine. It happens. Hospitals are no different. Same thing happens. A medication dispenser, that piece of technology is much better than that. You know, you think about that tool, it helps a more efficient, higher value process. Because technology is advancing, and you think about all the areas we use technology in our world, and it touches almost everything we do. But in the way we deliver services, pretty much the only way we use technology is the way we document our services. We have really good technology to document that we existed, but we stop there. And even when you look at in the school systems where people just stay until they're 22 in a lot of cases, there's a ton of technology there. They age out of that system, they move into the typical system that we're in, and then technology just goes away. Because it's never been used as a way to deliver services. And so we're looking to change that. When you think about how it's impacted our life, I mean, people have been using technology to solve staffing issues for a long time. You think about Kroger, so I was at Kroger yesterday, and 10 years ago at Kroger, right, is one-to-one checkout. You were there, someone else was there. Sometimes 2-to-1 if they get a high school kid to also bag their groceries. Now, they look down the road 10 years, they're like, we can't get enough people to do that. We're not gonna have the staffing to have one-to-one checkout of the grocery aisle. So what do? We came up with self-checkout. And 10 years ago, did anybody in here like self-checkout? No, we hated it, right? It was awful. Didn't work. I don't know how, like, I would avoid buying produce, because I don't want to try to figure out, look up, you know, what type of onion is this? I don't know. I know the difference between a sweet, a yellow, a white onion. It's not purple, so I know it's not that. There are 3 other choices. I don't know what it is. Now, 10 years later, I'm a whiz. Like, if Kroger needed, like, if they were like, we are desperate, we need someone to check groceries. I'm like, I'm here, I'll do it. Put me in, coach. I know how to do it. The banana 4011. Like, I don't know why I know that. Nobody ever taught me that. I figured it out. And now when I'm at the grocery store, I counted, right? Because I'm nosy and really like curious of the world around me. There is 18 self-checkouts at the Kroger in my neighborhood. 18 checkouts, 2 staff members, one on this side, one on that side. And then there were 2 lanes that still have that 1-to-1 ratio. And so for those that still need or want 1-to-1, maybe there's a cart full of groceries. I don't want to self-check out an entire cart. I need someone to do that for me. Or I'm at the self-checkout because I can do everything and I don't know what kind of onion I have. And so what do? Push a button, someone runs over and was like, how do you not know this? And how do I not know it? Just to scan it now, but I don't. And they help me when I need it. When I don't need it, they don't. Now, I don't know if that's really improved my quality of life. I'm definitely more independent, right? I don't technically need anyone there anymore. It doesn't mean my value's any better, but I'm more independent. The store is now able to do their thing. I went line less. I can do more of my life. And you think about, they looked at that a decade ago. So we are now at that entry point of technology in our field. It works really well, but there's still kinks we're working out. You know, there are not a ton of agencies that are moving to this technology model, or they are, but they're moving slow. We're trying to move quicker. Technology is advancing. We need to figure it out. Also, our individuals want independence. People we support tell us time and time again, as we survey them, as we talk to them, say, what do you want? When we talk about our goals, what do you want? They tell us they want to be more independent. They tell us stories about friends, siblings that live a different life than them. They want that. How do we give that? How do we help people be more independent? I can promise you, having a staff member sitting there in the house 24/7 is not the answer. And I can only say that because we actually studied it. We partnered with Xavier University's occupational therapy master's and PhD programs. And they studied levels of independence of people who have around-the-clock caregiving who really don't need it versus people that don't need it and have a mix of caregiving and round-the-clock for technology-based supports. And the people that are a good fit for the technology-based program outpace the people of independence for those who had round-the-clock staff but really didn't need it, but they were there just in case something happened. Also, our system is broken. You were just talking about new to the Medicaid system. Welcome aboard. It's bureaucratic. It's hard. It's moved slow. But we got to be innovative. We got to make it work because it's our calling. It's what we do. All these guys that introduce themselves that work for Easter Seals and anyone that I work with will tell you that we can't imagine doing anything else with our lives. This is what we do, is our calling for our work. And we live in a system that we can feel is not working. We know it's not working because people call us every single day. And says, I need your support, I need your services. We're like, we can't do anymore. We want to do more, we can. So that's why we're making these changes. What is smart living? I'll read part of this, but really, when we talk about smart living, it is not a piece of technology. It is not software, it's not hardware. I don't have a box of technology that will solve everyone's problems. I wish that would be awesome, right? We had one piece of technology that could solve everyone's problems. The reality of it is, though, everyone is so different that everyone's technology looks different. Every space that I work in, every house looks different, every apartment looks different, every person's wearables look different. Technology is really, smart living is a new way of delivering services. It includes a new way of how we do assessment. So today, awesome time doing assessments with 2 individuals. And really, it's a different way of assessing what our needs are. We don't just look at what do we have to get through to get our annual plan signed off on. We don't look at how do we justify having staff there? How do we increase need to justify having staff there? What we look at is what are someone's barriers for independence? What are people doing on their own? What are staff doing for them? And what are the things that are needed to be more independent? Again, this tool was developed in partnership with us and with Xavier University by experts in occupational therapy and technology. Is anyone in here an occupational therapist? If you ever meet a good occupational therapist, you will notice very quickly, they don't want to spend more than 30 minutes with really anyone. They want to get in, they want to provide value, and they want to get on to the next person. And in our field, we have built this culture around, we want to get in, and then really just dig in our hooks and stay there forever. But that's not going to help us help people be more independent, but we got to change our way we assess needs, assess staff, and assess how we deliver services. We also change the culture of how we think about services. You know, this idea that we figure out when are people home and we schedule staff to be there in case something happens is not helping people be more independent or helping them be more inclusive. It's no slight to the staff that provide that service. It's the system we set up for that. But how could we, what would it be like if we could use technology to be more efficient with our staffing so that we have more staff available to take people out in the community? So that when people are in the community, they have the safety and security tools, the guiding tools around what they're doing to help them have all those things. We talk about smart living, we call people smart living agencies, right? So we thought of a model, and there's really 2 ways of delivering services. The caregiving model, which is what has been done since we closed the big institutions, 50 years ago, where we show up and we wait for things to happen. It provides some really critical value in between those waiting for things to happen. And then a smart living agency is really what really is also known as a tech first type of service delivery model, where we don't say one or the other. Either you're going to get in-person staff or you're going to get technology-based supports. It's really a mixture of how do we use an assessment to figure out when does somebody need in-person staff. And for some people, it's 24 hours a day. And for some people, it's just during the day. For some people, it's just that period between I'm done with work until I go to bed. And then technology can fill in all of the gaps and provide supports all around them in the home, in the community, all of their areas. And so I want you to kind of open your mind to, it's not one or the other, it's really a fluid process of what makes best for sense of the people that are living there. It's not an initiative. This is not, hey, we're going to try this out at this one house, see how it goes, and then walk away from it. I believe, and nobody has given me any data that proves anything different, that we have to make pretty substantial changes in our field of service. Easter Seals believes that as well, which is why they let me come down here and talk with them. But it's different. The way we deliver services in Cincinnati is different than how it's delivered here in Arkansas. You guys, everyone has a different way of doing it. Easter Seals has a different way of doing services. We got to fit within their model that works. And so then I talked about the mixture of the 2. So what is remote support technology support or remote technology support? What is not remote support? Has anyone heard the term remote support before? It's not done as much here in Arkansas as it is in other states. In some states, it's mandated to use this type of support, or at least to look at it. In some states, like in Arkansas, there's really no rule around it, but we have best practices from the Fed, so we're working through it. But remote support is how we use technology to provide the same level of support we would as if we were in the home using technology for people that after an assessment, it makes sense for them. So the assessment will tell us, yes, this person is able to communicate, is able to receive supports through some technology-based platform. And so we're going to provide that with remote support. The staff are trained, employed, and work for Easter Seals. It's not hiring an outside company. This is not Life Alert. If you fall and can't get up, you don't push a button and get a call center in Pennsylvania or another country, and then somebody dispatches 911. This is using technology, sensors, monitors, touch screens, health devices, training remote support staff that are Easter Seal staff, oftentimes previous direct support in-person staff to change do a different type of model. That when staff aren't in someone's home, they're able to provide support. Or if there are staff in the home and they're working with somebody else and somebody needs support, the remote support staff are there. They're not waiting for things to happen. It's not, again, a call center, it's a caseload. They're working with people. They're there. The technology is there all the time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now we're starting with slow with Easter Seals. This is new for us. So we're going to be starting with just looking at overnight and saying, how do we support people better in overnight scenarios? And then we can look at, could we support them better during the day? That's a model that works out well to pull it out. Really, it looks at when hands-on in-person support is not needed, then technology can step in. So there's always someone there in case something happens or available to provide that value add support. What is it not? It's not monitoring. It's not a security system. It's not, if you open the door, it sends us the door signal to a call center who then calls us to run out there and see what happened. You're kind of a little late when that happens, right? We need to be able to be proactive. It's also not just calling in some outside company, and it's here in the home. This is a picture of Don. So Don is one of my most favorite guys that I've ever met. So Don has lived in a group home for about 26 years. 6-person group home on a campus with 5 other group homes. Because 25 years ago, when he was living independently, he gave himself 52 units of insulin instead of the 25 he was supposed to be insulin. Anyone that's ever administered insulin knows that's basically a death sentence, right? He didn't die, thankfully. And we found out that he had number dyslexia. He can do everything on his own, but has number dyslexia, which if you are administering insulin, it's kind of a problem, right? So the solution was, we'll put him in a group home, staff's there all the time, they'll just administer the insulin. He's super independent. Really, it caused him to have some behaviors, didn't like it. And we started looking at a model similar to roommate housing, looking at more community-based homes. And a home came up in the neighborhood that he grew up in, a home where he would have 2 other roommates. And he said, I want to live there. And our nurse was like, no way, because he will die. That basically is what she told us. And we thought, well, how do we use technology to help him have what he needs? So we did assessments with Don. And just to be clear, obviously Don's name and first name and last name are here because he has told me he can share this. If Don could come with me, he would. He would be here telling his own story, but he's not. And so we thought, well, what does he need to be independent? And we looked at it. Because he lived in a group home his whole life, guess what? Staff did his laundry for him all the time. And they told us, well, Don doesn't know how to do his laundry. We do his laundry for him. So we said, okay, why don't you take the day off and we'll do laundry for Don today. I said, Don, go do your laundry. He's like, well, staff does my laundry. I'm like, well, staff aren't here. So we got to figure out how to do laundry. And with a few simple prompts, Don did his own laundry. Don cooked with very simple meals because Don worked at a deli for his job. But they didn't let him cook at home because they were worried that his other roommates didn't know how to use knives, so he couldn't use knife either. Even though he would go to work and use one of those meat slicers, but at home, different at home, right? We provide support. But he still was having issues with his insulin, and he had to take his insulin every time he had a meal, and he would get those numbers wrong almost every single time. So we looked at this, we said, okay, with technology, we have this screen that he has, this basic communication screen that goes in every house we have. Remote staff are on the other end of that in a video call. Whenever he needs it, push a button, staff is there. They're working remotely, they're available all the time. He has a Bluetooth glucometer. So when he takes his glucose, it sends the numbers right to that, calls the staff. His hand, I just took my glucose reading, like, yep, I see it. I have your sliding scale in front of me. You have yours. Okay, what does that number say to you? If it's right, yep, that's right. Nope, actually that's wrong. So here's what that number actually is. Okay, dial up your insulin pen, show me what you got. Yep, that looks right. Give yourself your insulin shot. This is a perfect scenario, right? It's all you really need support for. Our nurse, because nurses are risk averse, said, no way, I need you to prove this works. So we did it for a month. 100%. See, he can move on his own. Now, she went another month because she's a nurse. She's like, this guy dies, it's on my watch, right? So we went another month, 100% success. Then a few more days, just to really, for some reason, put the cherry on cake. So he did that, and now he lives in the house. We found a whole bunch of other things, right? Nobody had ever taught him in his whole life that when you go to someone's house, you don't just walk in, because we lived on campus, you just walk in any door you wanted to. Turns out you don't do that in a neighborhood. You gotta knock. And when you knock and answer the door, you don't just walk in, you say, hello, can I come in? You learn new things about independence, but now for the first time in Don's life, he just lives on a street. is the mayor of that street, can tell you every kid, every dog, every person that lives on that street, on his porch. That's all he's wanted. And with technology, he can do that. Now, he still gets about 5 hours of in-person support every single day, because he still has other things that he's never had to do before on his own, and who knows if he'll get there, but he needs that support. And so you think about a little scenario like that where he can just live independently, that would no one's not anything. And it doesn't mean that he doesn't have any support in the beginning, because everyone was so worried about Don. He had 24/7 support in his house in the beginning and technology-based support. And then we would pull the reports and say, okay, look at the overnight. So our overnight staff slept on the couch. Don slept in his bed. 12 days, nothing happened. You got one to the bathroom, staff slept through that. Got up and had a snack, slept through that. Okay. Remote support is awake and watching him. When he got up to get a snack, called him and said, hey, having a snack, what are you having? Like, let's not use the stove in the middle of the night. How about that? Let's not get out at night. Let's just grab a handful of nuts and go back to bed, things like that. And he will tell you now, so when we started talking about this, he was nervous. Mom was nervous, grandma was nervous, everyone was nervous. But now when you talk to him, and he doesn't even like to go back and visit where he used to live. He wants to see that his roommates and his friends are like his family, but he's like, they come and see me. I don't want to go back there, because he's so afraid that's going to be back his life. He has this newfound independence. And that's what we're looking at. How do we help people more independent? So I have a quick video that talks about, we talk about what remote supports is, what does some of the technology look like, what does the process look like? I have a little video. This is a video. So LAD, again, is the agency that I work with and run up in Cincinnati. We shot this video. Anywhere where they say LAD, you can replace with Easter seals. And they talk about LAD will do an assessment. LAD will come out and do this. Just replace that. We didn't reshoot the whole video because it seemed unnecessary.
LAD remote support is a solution that will help someone's needs be met without needing to have staff in their home all the time. It's important for LAD remote support to only use the technology that's needed for a person. We don't want to put unnecessary sensors in that could keep someone from being independent. By only putting in the equipment that is required to meet their needs, that person's empowered to live in a safe space while being independent, and they have that safeguard of remote support as needed.
It's important that remote support, smart technology, anything is focused on the individual. The question would not start with what are the supports that we can provide. It's going to be what are the supports that you need.
We had a lot of parents really afraid of replacing staff with remote supports, but the individuals were able to tell them that they wanted this independence. It's now gone to decreasing the staff to just the meaningful, necessary services at that house.
At first service is good because they know that remote is there to help me with anything I need.
First, we assess what their actual needs are, what is important to them and for them, and what are supports that they currently receive. After we know what needs we need to solve for, we will identify the right technology and set it up to work for that person. LAD remote support will install the technology in the person's home, and we leave time for the person to practice using it before we rely on the new system to make sure they're comfortable. Once the person has gained comfort and competence using the system, we can move forward with either having them reduce staff in their home or maybe relying more on the remote staff than they would other natural supports like family.
There is an aspect of like doing the install, but the install part is kind of the most fun. When I install that screen on your wall and you hit the button and you talk to a staff member, there is so much joy and there's so much freedom in that.
At first we had 24/7 staff, then we went to remote. The first night I wasn't nervous or scared because there's people who are there to help us if we need it. And everything's going well. They're very helpful, and if we need anything, they tell us to just call them.
If there's a need identified that remote supports isn't able to work through, LAD has an extra layer of support where we would send a paid backup person to the home. Often people don't think that folks with disabilities are independent. We're showing families, adults, adult children, parents, that these folks have a lot more independence than they realize, and individuals, they want that. They want to show their parents, I'm more independent than you even know, and I want to be more independent. Remote supports is going to open up more possibilities for independence for individuals than most people can even imagine.
If somebody wants remote support, go for it and be confident with yourself. Staff will be there and they will help you if you need it.
All right, so these are some of the frequently asked questions just to help you out before we get there. But what that video shows too is kind of our process we go through. And I think some of the nuances lost always when you try to do everything in a 4-minute video of type of the process and how it all works. So we'll talk a little more about it. But really, at the end of the day, the thing that I want to always impress upon people is it's not, again, just replacing out and saying, okay, this is good, we're going to pull it all out. So that young lady, Margot, with the curly hair at the end, they had like the 24/7 supports all the time in person. They even had a wait staff overnight because she had a roommate who wasn't verbal, and there was this fear that if you need something at night, he wouldn't yell out and nobody would be able to help him. So we put in technology, and we just said, let's just see what's going on, because you can put technology and you can pull it out, it's not working. It's really easy. I mean, 90% of it's double-sided tape, batteries, and Wi-Fi. There's very few things that even get attached to a wall. So we said, well, let's try it out, because his roommates feel like they're more independent. He really wants to try. And we found that, yeah, he doesn't really need a lot of support overnight. They were doing a whole lot, even the awake staff. The awake staff, that house is immaculate though. And what that staff member told me when I said, we're gonna look at using some remotes overnight, or maybe a mixture of, you could be asleep at night, but the remote is still awake and they can wake you up if they need something. She said, well, who's gonna clean the house then? That was literally her concern. It's like, I deep clean the house at night. I'm like, we can pay someone to do that, right? We're not a cleaning service. I mean, that's the misconception, right? But we do. Our staff clean a lot. They do all these things because there's not a whole lot else for them to do in some areas. When this video was shot, they had overnight support, and then the in-person staff were still there for all of the day, and even for hours after they were asleep and before they woke up. And now, a couple of years later, they get about 4 hours a day of in-person support. The West is by remote because of the way they progress. Now, in other areas, they still have 24/7 in-person support, and the remote and the technology backs them up, or provides value, or just gives them augmented supports. And so there is this idea that when we look at adding the technology at the beginning, it's how do we be better at what we do? How do we provide value? How do we give them more independence? And then if there are areas where in-person staff may not be needing, do we try something different? I've been a DSP for a long time, and I can tell you that anytime I work an overnight sleep shift, I'm providing absolutely no value. I'm a heavy sleeper, and there are piles of documented paperwork to prove it, because I'm the one that would sleep on the couch, and we have the remote support also running. And I would sleep, and I'd wake up the next day, and they'd say, okay, let me tell you what you slept through. I mean, they would roll through it, and they would tell me all these different things, and it was always interesting to be like, oh yeah, you guys could do this better. Now, in other cases, we do need that in-person support. There is need, there are things there. But some of the questions we asked are, how identifies individuals identified to be part of this program? So there is one aspect that I won't go into. Easter Seals has of their whole intake process, but how do we determine if someone's a good fit for smart living type of services? And that truly does start with several layers of assessment. The first one is really how independent somebody is. What are they able to do? What is staff doing? We talk with the staff, like, what do you actually do while you're there? It's not like, what are you doing all day? It's like, what are you truly like providing value around? When are you not? And then we talk with the individuals, like I was able to do today, and talk with them and say, what are you doing? What are you good at? Where do you need help? And you would be hopefully not shocked at the level at which individuals know where their staff are and where they're not. And the staff are there, also giving feedback. There's been times where I ask them, it's like, so tell me, about how you cook in the kitchen and where you need assistance. Like, I don't need help at all. My staff members went there to start with that. Let me walk you through what actually happened. Then we go back and have another conversation. But really, we're going to be doing assessment right now. It's based on the roommate housing program, about where we can have shared staffing, where staff are always going to be around. The other difference that I think they covered, but I don't know if everyone caught it, is that if there is a need, there are in-person staff available. So when you think about how sites are set up, they're clustered, and sometimes it's clustered within an apartment complex, sometimes it's clustered within a neighborhood or a zip code. But we always have staff available that if remote staff are not able to solve for something when in-person aren't there, and it's not an emergency, this backup person can go out there. If it's an emergency, obviously they would call emergency support, just like an in-person staff would, you know? But the difference is how they use technology. For example, we have someone who, when staff were there and even when staff were, when they had all the time staffing, this person liked to cook and they were terrible at it. And so they would set up the fire alarm all the time, and then they would just call the fire department. It was just wired that way. Every time this person cooked, fire truck was coming out, which was not great because there's probably actual fires, but it was great for the people who live there because they got to see a fire truck, right? Firemen loved it because who doesn't love that? I mean, but what's happening is we were using all of these other resources. Staff were having to go out and figure out what's going on. When we put in technology-based supports, we put in a sensor that when the smoke alarm goes off, it alerts the remote staff. The remote staff can turn on a camera and see what's going on. Oh, it's just Greg, he's cooking again. We need to increase his cooking supports. So they tell him, okay, here's how you put that out, like turn the stove off, or they could remotely turn the stove off, throw a towel over it if there's an actual fire, that kind of thing. Or is it truly a fire? And now all of a sudden we have eyes in every room, sensors in every room, we truly know everyone's outside and can stay with them and provide support. All these different areas, that's how it works. How does it change current services? Not a ton. I mean, in areas where people still need staff, they still have staff. The only difference is when they don't need in-person staff, they still have staff available for other needs. There's this misnomer that when we use technology, we remove staff. And we use that term because we're removing the physical person, but in reality, the support is greater. So when you think about, use a 4-person home, for example, a 4-bedroom home. If one staff member is there, they can only be in one room at a time, only provide supports to one person at a time. But just think if we have technology in a home and there's a fall in 2 different rooms at the same time, the remote can respond to both at the same time and say, okay, this person tripped and they got up and they're fine. And this person tripped, didn't get up and needs an ambulance within a few minutes, or the staff can cover across the house, those kind of things. But the other things that Easter Seals does, they're not going to change. I mean, there's a reason that they're a leader in services in the state, know what they're doing. Does this mean people will have no longer in-person staff? I've already hopefully answered that. No, there's still always, I have yet to find anyone that doesn't need some level of in-person staff. The other question I get asked every time that I will save you from having to ask it, what happens when the power or internet goes down? Some people will phrase that as an if question. It is not an if question. The power will go out. Internet does go down. That is the reality we live in, right? In Cincinnati, where I work, but thankfully don't live, it is famously one of the world's worst power grids. Strong gust of wind, half the town's losing power. And then they get it back, within an hour or two, but it's just the way it goes. And so what we look at when we look at technology is how do we solve for these areas? So when you look at a house full of technology, like I said, the majority of it runs off of batteries. That's by design because they don't go down when the power goes out. You think of camera technology. When we first started this project 4 years ago, cameras, which we use just to verify what's going on, they don't even record, so we're not even storing anything. Just to run that system 4 years ago, they had to be hardwired to get any quality. Now, 2 AA batteries and a camera off Amazon last 18 months with better quality than you could have ever dreamed of. And now when the power goes out, cameras are still what you need. The motion sensors are 10-year battery. The things that do plug in, like the touch screens that uses our communication portal and the Huffer devices, they've got about a 3 to 4 hour battery on them. So we know immediately when that power goes out. I'll tell you right now that if the power goes out in Cincinnati, this phone lights up like a tree, like a Christmas tree, because I will start getting alerts every place power internet goes down. When internet goes down, we have backup, so you can deploy a backup cellular service. If it's a place where internet's unstable, we just build in a secondary backup. Then the Wi-Fi is plugged into a battery backup, so it's always on for at least 5 or 6 hours. Med dispensers are the other thing that gets plugged in, and they have about a 24-hour minimum battery life for like a lot of FDA requirements. Some of them last for days without being plugged in. So that's what happens when it goes down. We triage. We kind of start watching it once it goes out and say, okay, we know we have about 4 hours. If it comes on in a half hour, an hour, we don't do anything. We also may look at, okay, does someone have typically alone time? So somebody typically is alone during that period anyways. Okay, then we're just going to use other resources. Does that person have a phone? Can we get it back on? Do we need to, in some areas we have a site where the power goes out enough, it's just rural enough, that when it goes out for a while, and it goes out enough that putting in a generator solves that huge problem for us. All these different things you can work around. It works out differently when you're an apartment, turns out apartment owners only put generators in their apartments. But portable battery generators can be, there's all these different ways of solving it. But the cool thing is we have data pretty quickly about where things are at. Wherever we provide support, I can tell you exactly what the best internet service provider is. I mean, hands down, we can give you data of what their uptime is, regardless of what they can tell you on TV. Yeah, use this one, they're never gonna go down, or this one's garbage, don't go near it. What is the timeline of the person you support? That's the question people wanna know. And the answer is, I don't know yet, because we're working through our process. Right now, we're doing initial assessments of individuals who we think are a good fit. And that will tell us if we're right. We assume we are, we're pretty good at what we do, but we don't know until we've gone through assessments. Once we get through those assessment periods, then we bring everyone back to the table and we talk about, here's our findings. That process is a team, right? The reason you all are here today before we ever really get into anything is because it would be kind of malpractice in our field to just decide to do this without your input. Also, there's a level of consent we usually have to get to, so we can't do anything until you sign that paper anyway. So everyone thinking, well, they're just gonna do this without us, that also is not on the table either. But the timeline really is that this next year for us at Easter Seals is, bringing on the roommate housing program, getting people involved with that, and then figuring out where technology will work. And the idea of when we decide, or if we decide that there's areas where staff are not needed in person for periods of time, that will be part of a process. In the beginning, though, we want to make sure it works. And when we do install technology, even if we know, like, let's say there's been sites where I know the person already doesn't receive 24/7 staffing, so we're not going to go there. We still overlap in the beginning. So we'll install technology, we'll keep typical supports in place. A lot of times when individuals still live at home with mom and dad, and they're going to move into a setting where they're using technology, guess what? That touchscreen works anywhere there's internet. You have internet at your home, we can start it there. Get them used to it, get them using it, and then it can transition out with somebody who's with them, giving them that level of overlay and security. The other thing that's cool about it is it increases the interaction that individuals have with their families a lot of times too, because it gives them another way to connect. That video touchscreen that you saw people using is not just, they can't only call staff. You can put in anyone to video call with them. You want a video call with mom? Great. Hit that button. Mom may answer, mom may not. Mom can choose not to. Mom may call, individual may answer, mom may not. That's the way it goes. But it gives another layer of communication, and we can see what people communicate more with their families that way. So what does the experience look like? This is a pretty typical process that we go through. Again, it starts with assessment to figure out what are the person's actual needs. Where is the areas where we can be better at what we do? That assessment actually is tied to a database of technology that tells us, okay, somebody needs assistance with medication. These are the very specific areas of why they need assistance. Here are the devices that have been vetted by our team of product developers and people at Xavier and people that have looked at this in our field that would be the best fit. And here's how they all work together. It goes through all those areas. That assessment also tells us here are a person's needs they have to be independent that cannot be solved with technology. And they exist. And that list is long. If someone gets fed with a G-tube, I don't care if there's a robot that can do that. That just seems terrifying to me to try to hit that just right. I did see, though, a med dispenser prototype that could inject someone with insulin. That probably I was the only one that thought it was cool. Everyone else was like, this thing is scary. I'm like, I just gotta get close enough and it gets you. They exist. Just because it exists, I don't think we use it. Once we understand what we need to do, we bring the team back together and we talk about it as a team, right? We have our in-person supports. People love the staff they work with. We're not going to interrupt. We're probably going to give them more higher value things to do. We bring the families together, case managers say, here's what we're going to do. Here's our transition plan. Here's what's going to work. Everybody on board. Anyone that raises their hand in that room, we sit and talk through it. We move through it at a pace that makes sense. Once we have the initial support technology in, which is like the communication technology, the scheduling, the stuff from someone's individual plan we can build into it, the safety and security sensors around the house. Once people know how to use that, then we move into, okay, what can we do around health integration? If somebody is getting their blood pressure taken by staff every day, guess what? There's a device that can do that just as well. Not only can it do that, it can set baselines, it can communicate, download reports, send them to a doctor, all that good stuff. We see a lot of times when people move out for the first time, regardless of ability, that when you move out for the first time, everyone puts on that freshman 15, right? And that's fine typically, because then you come back down. It's part of like living on your own for the first time. But with smart scales, we can see, okay, Are they actually losing that freshman 15? Are we getting to a freshman 40? Do we need to adjust that? As someone never cooked their own meals, they never thought about it. So we had an individual who, he lived with 2 other roommates, one in an apartment. He was the guy that cooked all their meals. He'd never cooked for one. And we never really thought about that until after living on his own for 3 months, he had put on about 40 pounds. And so I sat and watched him he made spaghetti, right? 1 box of spaghetti, 1 can of sauce, put it on a plate, eat it all. Didn't think, oh, I need to split this into 3 portions. You know, once you learn that, then we can get back onto healthy eating, understanding that. We have things around home automation, right? People with disabilities oftentimes will let anyone into their house because they have staff that are coming to their house at any given time. Staff change, staff shortages, who knows who's coming in and going. With things like a smart video doorbell, which probably a lot of us already have on our house. Push that doorbell, it shows the person in the house who's there, also shows the remote staff who is there. And then tie that in with a, smart lock, and it can help determine who's coming and going. The staff might tell the person, hey, you don't need to open this door anymore. Like, you're not buying solar. Stop, bring in the solar salesman in here. Those kind of stuff. Or, hey, you know what? That actually is a support person who's coming in to teach you and train you in this area. We're going to let them in. We can also keep track of those areas. So home automation can do a lot. It also builds into a lot of sensory activities. Right? We have a lot of individuals who staff are there to help them calm down or work through behavioral issues. Sensory technologies can help with that. It's amazing what you can do in a sensory room and say, if somebody's feeling agitated or overwhelmed or overstimulated, saying, hey, Alexa, start Brian's calm setting in my bedroom. All of a sudden, all lights go out except for a blue light, because I like blue. And Guns N' Roses comes on because who knows why, but that calms me down. And aromatherapy kicks on. That whole package right there costs like $50 and can change the way somebody has it. But also, the staff are getting alerted and saying, hey, Brian has used his calm setting 4 times this morning. So he's trying to calm down and clearly it's not working. Let's call and see if we can try something else. Like, hey, Brian, go on a walk. Maybe that's what you did today. Instead of waiting for Brian to punch his roommate, because he just can't take it anymore. And that's what I do historically. These are real scenarios that we see all the time. And then we look at our future planning. How do we continue to work with people as technology changes? How do we help them use it less if they don't need it, more if they do? This is what comes out of our assessment. You can see it breaks it up around communication, home monitoring, smart health, daily routines, external monitoring, home automation. These are different areas of focus people have. Daily routines, this is from a guy named Drew that we work with. He doesn't need 16 devices for those routines. He just has 16 routines that can solve for it. It could be 2 devices that solve for it, but that's what it's built into. Again, each person's different. This is our proof of concept. For 3 years, we studied this with Xavier University School of Occupational Therapy. They looked at return on investment. If we're going to invest in technology, does it make sense? Because we want to use our money wisely. But also, what does it do for a person's level of independence? What does it do for their level of satisfaction? This is a pulled out the same group. This group of 4 is the same 4 people. The top one is their levels of independence, and the bottom one is their levels of satisfaction with the services they receive. And you can see each person's level of independence actually grew. Now, part of that makes sense because if people aren't there as much, of course, you're going to be more independent. These guys know that I famously hate one household chore more than anything else. Laundry. I hate every aspect of it. I don't like wet clothes. I don't like touching the hot clothes. I don't like folding them. I hate all of it. If I knew that if I got my clothes dirty enough, that Medicaid was going to pay someone to do my laundry so that I could be part of the community with clean clothes, it wouldn't take me days to stop doing laundry and letting someone else do it for me, regardless of my ability. But when you take away a person doing things for them, there's a forced independence. But also there are so many times when our staff just do things for them, or they've never been trained to do it. Because why do we need to teach someone to cook if we're paying staff to do it? Might as well get our money worth out of it. So all these different areas. This was actually a 3-year study published around qualitative and quantitative from Xavier University, where they actually researched it and saw what's going on. This is just a quick graph that shows out of all the things that we know we do in providing support, 89% have some sort of technology-based solution that can assist with that. When we narrow that down to health and safety items, 99% of those still have a tech solution. Doesn't mean it works for everybody. Doesn't mean that it's the right fit for everyone, but there is a solution for almost everything. And if we can find a way to make it work, not only does it increase someone's health and safety, but it also helps our staff be better at their job. There are things that we can't solve for, like non-convulsive seizures. I don't know of any tech that can actually track that in a home setting. Fall detection, we are really great at. I can tell you someone has a fall really quick, almost anywhere. Fall prediction is still not quite there yet. It's on its way. I mean, the data is there to build the sets for it. It just takes us time to catch up to it. You think about like transportation, right? That fits into that category of not identified. You know, until we have fully self-driving cars that anyone can use that may exist in 10 or 20 years, we're still reliant on people to pick us up and drive us somewhere if we don't have a driver's license. But could you use Uber? Could you use an app that helps guide you through your neighborhood? You know, could you use some smart glasses that tell you when to cross the street, when not to, those different areas? That's where we think about what can technology do. We already talked about the staffing model. I want to show one last video before we go to questions. This is after we opened one of our first homes. After a few months, we went back and talked with the individuals and the parents that lived there and got their experience. And so you can hear it from me all day, but I want you guys to hear it from other parents and their experience. So this was our first home. We did an incubator home that if you're ever in Cincinnati, you can see it. We got really overzealous. The home has about 190 something pieces of technology. In all reality, the guys live there probably need 30 or 40, but we really wanted to show this thing off. It's overwhelming, but it kind of gives you a picture. So this is just a quick little video, a few minutes, and then we'll go into questions.
Do this.
Let's do this.
What's up, Jim? This is unbelievable. I love it.
Welcome home, Jim. How are you?
I really like this house because, well, it's big in a lot of room. We can play, like, cornhole in the back or in the front. Like, bring some couple friends over. Like, toss the football, dribble the basketball, or do other fun things.
I think it's awesome. I think it's exciting.
How do we take technology and virtual remote supports, combine those to develop a package that really is accessible, that could be affordable? The 4 guys that live here, it's going to drastically change their lives, but then the 400 that are going to come after them, that we can take what we learn here and really increase people's independence by just learning and growing and changing the way we actually provide the service.
We have thought and felt so long, you know, what it would take for us to provide Drew with a situation like this. And, you know, the cost, the expense, the right supports, the right environment. We didn't imagine that that was going to happen for so long, or if it could have even happened at all.
I think it will be great because I will get to know the guys that I'm living with and be able to be back in my home community.
It was unbelievable.
Really, there are no words. You took a step into a future that you never imagined was possible. And it's indescribable. It's phenomenal, from toothbrushes all the way to smart refrigerators. And I know I'm at a loss for words, but there are no words to describe what we see and how grateful we are for the opportunity.
23 years ago, we never knew this was even going to be possible.
What we're looking at is a house, and it's so much more than that.
I feel like this is just giving him a chance to be Jim and go as far as he can, and I'm very excited. I'm very grateful. Very grateful.
I don't know the words to say it. It's just, I'm finally home.
So with these individuals, so I don't know if you can tell from that, just to give you an idea of the level of need. So one of them is, I don't know if he's 100% blind, but it's really close. He's the reason I have Braille business cards. He's also the receptionist of our office. And we came in one day and he was just throwing business cards in the garbage as people would bring them in. We're like, what? Hey, Matt, why'd you throw that away? He's like, I don't know what these are. People give them to me, but I just throw them away. Okay. So, you know, teaches us things. But, you know, he had moved into a different part of the county Because even though they lived he was from a suburb, it was a provider desert, there was no providing services there. And so we had to leave his home community because there wasn't enough staff out there to provide the supports for him. Another individual, he doesn't speak, he has a degenerative muscle disorder, he's using one cane there now, he uses two. He actually uses the walking sticks from REI because he's like 26, doesn't want to use a wheelchair, doesn't want to use a walking, wants to be super independent. He falls every day. It is part of his life. Until he's in a wheelchair, until he chooses to use one, which he refuses, he's gonna fall every day. So we had to solve for that. How do we support somebody who has told us, I don't care that I'm gonna fall every day. I'm gonna hopefully not get hurt every time. Sometimes he does, but he wants that level of independence. The other two individuals, and he lived in a group home before that because that's what everyone thought he needed. The other two individuals live with their mom and dad who had been on a wait list probably since their birth. Their one dad works for our county system and the other one was his friend. So I'm assuming they were on a wait list their whole life and probably were told, well, you can provide services where we go. They lived in this town also where there was services. And by providing this model, they were able to have their kids move out of their home for the first time. Now it's interesting when you think about the four of them had 24/7 supports, because as a parent, you guys know that if someone lives at home with you, it doesn't mean they don't have round the clock support, right? It's just unpaid. Most cases, you're on a different type of waiver. It's unpaid, but there's still support. And so they had this opportunity. So that was 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago. They are all still living there super independently. Two of them have gotten jobs. One of them, that house is an HOA, which is a whole other thing. The HOA didn't want us there. They thought it was going to be this horrible thing. We found the guy, Matt, one that's vision impaired. He is your perfect HOA board member. He goes around and measures bushes and writes letters. He ran for he's on their HOA board. This year, I got, Matt, our receptionist, he showed me an email. He's like, I have this weird email. I don't understand what it means. He's like, the neighbor said I have to cook them dinner. Couldn't figure it out. Well, the neighborhood had been doing this progressive dinner. They'd all lived there for 10 years. We were the last house on the street. Every year for Christmas, do a progressive dinner. This is the first year where they invited them. They didn't invite the staff. Staff had no idea what was going on. They invited these individuals and said, hey, we do a progressive dinner every year. It's on this day. And you are in charge of cooking this portion of the progressive dinner. Like, how cool is that? Like, these guys are like, I don't know what this is. I got to cook dinner for the neighbors. Like, we'll figure it out. We'll help you. But we're not going to have staff there either. You're on your own. And this would have never been possible without technology. It's not perfect. Sometimes it's real scary because we don't know what's going to happen. But we can see at the end of the day, they're more independent, they're more successful. In this house with one of our individuals, he was really independent, and we thought we could produce more of his in-person staff. It was new. We were excited. It was the shiniest new toy we had. We were a little aggressive. And we realized after a few months, he actually does need about another hour of in-person support than we thought. And the fight that we had with him to put that back into his life was 30 times harder than the fight to pull it out. He's like, I don't do that. We're like, well, you do. And there was no data to prove it that he would have cared about. And so, we figured it out. We finally got him to go along with it, but that's what we're looking at. And so, and those parents, if you have questions down the road and you want to talk to a parent, I can give you their number and they will tell you everything they love about it. They will tell you everything they hate about it. They are unaware that I have feelings at all, apparently, because they are willing to share those information with those individuals. Just know that for every person it's different. And we've got videos like this every house we ever open. We do a little video that we give back to the families. And this one we like to share with others. But where are we at now? So what's next? We're completing assessments to see if we're finding the right people, who's getting assessed, we're developing needs. Some of those assessment tools we may share with you. If you're an individual who's still living at your home, we have a tool that helps you look at it and see where's my individual that I support at an assessment on an independence level. What we find as parents, and parent myself, I either grossly overestimate or grossly underestimate the level of independence my child has, regardless of ability. I can never hit that mark. Either they are way more independent than I think they are, or my gosh, how did I dare let them do that? And so we worked with, again, some experts in transitioning, parenting, and teaching skill building, things like that. We have someone who ran a transition program at a local high school for 30 years, helped us develop this marker that we can share. And it'll give you a score and say, hey, here's where this person's at, but even better yet, hey, here are some resources for you. We have an individual where a family will come and say, I want my child to live in an apartment. They're ready to be independent. They don't need a lot of staffing. They don't do a lot at home. Like, great. So how long do you leave them home alone? Like 5 minutes here or there. Like, okay, we're not quite there yet. Why don't you go out of town for a weekend and see how that goes? Like, whoa, hold on. It's like, well, you just said you want to live across town. Like, well, I want staff with them around the clock too. It's like, that's not reasonable for the needs. So that's where we're at. Again, we're gonna go through and see where does it work, we're gonna pair up solutions. We're gonna train people on how to use it, train individuals, train family members on how to use it. You know, we train individuals on how to troubleshoot. You'd be amazed at how many times our remote staff are calling into someone and say, hey, can you go unplug that and plug it back in? Because don't tell any IT guys in the building, but that's like solves most of your problems. Plug it back in. Unplug it, hit power a few times while it's not plugged in, then plug it in. They'll fix your phone almost every time. But the process is deliberate. I know I talk fast, doesn't mean I move fast. We are going to go through this piece by piece. If it feels like moving too fast, say something. If you like moving too slow, you can talk about that too. Usually doesn't feel that way to anyone except for me or these guys on the team. You can never move fast enough. But that's where we're at. Again, our goal is not how do we find ways to just do more with less staff. Our goal is how do we help people be more independent? How do we really fulfill on that mission that we have to empower people to be more independent? There's not a nonprofit that delivers services in our field in this country that doesn't say somewhere in their mission about independence, power, inclusion, those kind of things. We don't do it as well as we could. I believe with technology we can do better. So with that, I would love to hear what questions you may have.
Okay, I'll start.
Yes.
So do they have build a relationship like with one person, or are they all constantly always talking to 50 people on your call center?
Thank you. Yes, good question. Call center. That's a dirty word in my book. We don't have a call center. So how it works, so how staffing is now, right? If you have a home or a geographical cluster, you have staff that are assigned to that area, right? They're trained on those individuals. They know that they've been in their home. It is the exact same way with the remote support staff. The difference between smart living and typical remote monitoring is we don't have a call center. Our staff are trained by us. Easter SEALs to be trained by them. Might say loud for me, but they're trained by them. They know them. They've been in their homes. They've worked shifts in their house, even though they're going to be remote staff. They focus on them. So even if, let's say we have 40 people all getting remote supports and there's 4 people providing that support, it doesn't mean they're just randomly taking calls as they come in. It's not the Sears Repair Center. It really is. These are the people I'm focused on. I know them. I've seen their plans. I've talked with them. I've worked with them. I've been in their home. I know what they need. We work tirelessly to build out really solid operational plans too, to say, if this happens, then we do this. And it's by the individual. And so when you think about, I'll talk about this home again. Again, these guys have signed every consent form in the world. Let me tell you all of their whole life story. They love it. It's the greatest thing ever. And this guy actually shared the story on our local news, so I know he's finally showing it. But he has a very weird, unique, specific eating disorder, compulsion, where he gets up in the middle of the night and will eat everything in his fridge until he chokes, run out of food, throws up, or just gets bored with it. And so before that, he was with mom and dad. And so their solution is they put a bike lock on his fridge at night, which they are able to do. It's their house. We cannot do that in our field. That's not independent, right? And so when he moved out, they not only gave us the lock, said, here you go. He's fine with it. Just put it on. We're not going to do that. So we started looking at what did we do, and we talked with the model that's typically in the typical monitoring system is we would put a sensor on the fridge. When the fridge opens, we would call him and tell him, hey, knock it off. But that doesn't work either, right? If you know anyone that has any kind of compulsive disorder, once you start, it's really hard to stop. You know, it's like a bag of chips. You know, it's easier to get me to not open the bag than to eat the entire bag. Those are different things. So with him, what we do is we have a sensor in his bedroom, lets us know when he's up and out of bed. There's motion sensors in his hallway, let us know when he's going towards the hallway. When he heads towards the living room, we know based on his history at this time of night, he's probably into the fridge. So we have a video call next to the fridge on before he ever gets there. Now, if his roommate does the same thing, his roommate's fine. He might get up and get a snack, go back to bed. The staff might still call and see if he needs anything, but they're not going to force that call and be really proactive. And so since he's been doing that and having that protocol, not only does he have less restrictions around his life, but he's actually healthier because he's not eating in the middle of the night, because he was great. Like for years, his parents didn't know, he knew the code of that bike lock, just watched it one day. So he'd wait and he'd go open it. When they had paid staff that were there overnight, he'd wait for him to fall asleep and sneak by him. Turns out it's amazing what you can sleep through. But with technology, we can do this. And he wants to be, it's not something he wants to do. So helping him through that. And so the staff, they know him. And I can promise you that if some random person pops up on that screen, he's going to be like, I don't know who you are. I don't care. It's also not a phone call, it's not an intercom, it's actually a face that he knows. So he's connected with them. We check in with them every single day through that video call, regardless of whether they have staff in the home or not, to continue to build that connection. We also do required training around empathy. Because I don't know who in here has done any kind of telehealth visit, doctor's visit, therapy visit. If you've done that through telehealth, it is not the same as being in person. It's just, that's how it works. I mean, I'm sure there's science out there that will tell you that. I've never done the research, but I feel it. But also empathy can be taught. You know, there's lots of research out there that shows empathy can be taught. So we teach it. We talk about, we're going to be talking about tomorrow with the staff on empathy. And so they understand that they're here to work with individuals. It's not just, I'm responding to them, I've got to get off this call in 30 seconds, move on to the next one. There's times when I spend a long time with people, you know, and I get shift reports every day still, and I'll see them and they'll say, hey, it's so-and-so, you know, is really stressed out. Then we sat and we problem solved and talked through it. And then, you know, I checked back in on her an hour later, see how she was doing, and it wasn't going well. And so, you know, she said she just really needed someone to talk to, someone with her. It turned out a family member had passed away. And so we called the staff that was in the area and said, hey, you know, she needs someone there. Like, this isn't gonna cut it tonight. Let's have someone work there. Not an emergency need, but she needed someone. And so you're able to do that. And since we knew her, since it wasn't some call center in another state, it's like, okay, yeah, you're agitated, but do you really need something? You know, he's not gonna help and safety risk. We're gonna move on to the next thing. It changes that whole dynamic. Sorry, I only have long answers to really short questions. Yes. Or no.
We start paying for questions? $5 for the next question?
So I have a question.
Yes.
So if they have like they're have medicine that they have to take, will it like have a like timer type thing, or like tell them when they need to take it, or remind them to take it, or what, how does that work?
Yeah, all that and more, depending on what they need. So for some people, they might still need a person to give them their medication. If it's, you know, they only get medicine in liquid form. I work really closely with a lot of medication dispenser companies. I give them advice because I desperately want them to be better at their job. But none of them have figured out how to dispense a medication in liquid, even though it makes perfect sense to me. Or a cream, which like I've got a tool that puts out toothpaste at a metered amount for my kids who only know how to squeeze out an entire tube. But for some reason it exists for toothpaste, but not anything else. I don't know. The shot thing's a little weird. I think it's cool, but it's a little weird. But for other devices, they really determine what the person needs. So some people still need in-person supports. Some just need a reminder. And it's, hey, you get a reminder on your screen, it's time for your medications, you take it, you check off that you did it, and then it's done. Some people need a visual verification, like, hey, it's time to take your medication, the staff call in, they watch you take your medication. Some people need their medications locked, so it's in a dispenser, that, hey, it's time to take your medication, it reminds you, they go in, they push a button, say, yes, it's me, put it in their pen, or facial recognition, whatever they need to do, and then it dispenses the medication, it knows they took it. Some people need all of that, and they need someone to watch them do it, to make sure they're not like, yeah, sure, shrug it over my shoulder. Some people need their medication dispenser filled by a pharmacy. Some people need it filled by themselves. Some people need it filled by staff. There's too many versions. And the thing is we use the full spectrum. Some people need to be able to take their medication with them to work or to their program, but they still need to document they took it. It can do almost everything. And that's what's kind of different about our model. We're not a tech company that said, hey, we built this technology that will solve this problem. We said, we're an agency. I believe that off-the-shelf technology can solve most of our problems. Let's just pair it all together in a meaningful way. So we don't have to say, we use this dispenser, hopefully everybody fits into it. We can say, hey, you can do this one, or this one, or this one, or this one, and we can make them all work. I use one at my house because even with a reminder on my phone, this is taking my medication at 6 a.m. every day, I still forget. And so I had one at my house when I was not traveling as much that I would get it, would drop in a little thing, it would remind me that I was getting a text when I forgot. It's cool, it's fun.
Drop it into there.
It drops into a cup, and then there's others that are like in a tray where a little door will open. There's others that it comes out in a pouch, so they can take it with them. It's almost unending the different ways. And a lot of these technologies have been around for a while. They're catered towards the aging population. So a lot of the stuff is created because someone has dementia, we're gonna see the medication. Okay, how do we help them do that? So we have a chat question.
When will Easter Seals be accepting applications, and how long is the process? You may have mentioned this, but I'm having a hard time hearing. Okay, so Angelia, as far as this, you're talking about applications for staff or applications for roommate housing? For roommate housing, you would go on to roommatehousing.org and scroll down to the bottom, and there's a link to the room sync survey. Yeah, so we'll get into that here in just a minute, but yeah. All right, the housing, okay, yep.
I typed that right?
Yep.
All right. Woo.
Well, 2 M's, but yeah.
Oh, don't do that.
All right.
Susan, you had a restroom, the housing.org, shoot.
It looked like there was a lot of reading involved on the remote. So,
On that screen.
yes, so how much reading ability are,
It's,
is needed?
you don't have to have any, so we can change out that for pictures, you can change it out for diagrams. It's fully customizable. So the technology that we use for our touchscreen, it's with a company called GrandCare. They built the technology, it's like 20 years old, it's super stable technology, it's been around forever. And it was built for people with Alzheimer's, and the guy that built it, his aunt, forgot the stove was on and burned her house down. She survived, but burned the house down. And so they put in this technology to build this thing to be able to connect one-to-one. We've helped them rebuild it for multiple people, but you can, if someone can read, we can have it do words, you could do simple prompts, you could do pictures, any different thing to assist them. We can have it flash, it's super customizable. We know a lot of individuals we support don't read. We have individuals who are blind or vision impaired, so that's not gonna work either. So you can connect it with, speaking devices, verbal assistants. So you can talk to Alexa and you can tell it to do almost anything, even interact with the screen. If you have a verbal impairment, Alexa is a paperweight, really expensive, doesn't do anything for you. So it's really looking at the individual and pairing it out. But we do serve a lot of people who have either no or limited reading ability. And so we find out where are they at, what can they read, and is that a skill that we can work on with really small, simple words that could take the place of more complex things. Some of us apparently can't spell, so, or determine between org and comma. I apologize online. Yes.
So I have a couple questions. So the assessment, is that a specific tool that's already developed and in use?
Yeah, so we built it again with Xavier's OT department. Their master's students. The first one was developed about 3.5 years ago. It was mostly handwritten. At that point, we then turned it into an online tool. We then connected it with a technology database. Now it's in its final, most updated version where if it asks you a question, and then with machine learning, will ask you follow-up questions or ignore other ones. And so it's a tool that we built. It's for people in our field. We train others on how to use it, and then they have access to it forever.
And who, is that assessment done on the individual or parents involved? Yes or no? I mean.
So typically done with the individual. Yeah, it's with the individual. If someone's still living with their parents, we want them, whoever the caregiver is. If they're living independently with staff, we'll have the staff be a part of it. We do try to get as much information from people that are in their life. So it starts with them. It's really focused around the individual. Now, sometimes you have individuals who either do not want to have any part of an assessment because they find no value in it, or they don't communicate in a way where we can do a verbal assessment. So we might have to augment it or have somebody assist us with that as well.
And can you talk a little bit about health and safety as a part of this, the remote part of this? I mean, so I have a daughter who has 24/7 staff because I have extreme health and safety concerns about her being by herself. So talk to me about that.
Yeah. So what we would do is we would identify what are those concerns, what are the things that we're trying to solve for. So if we can identify, here are the things that there are concerning of outside of just, I'm just nervous something could happen. What are other actual things that we're looking at? Are there people that will just leave the house and wander into oblivion and we'll never see them again? Is it that they're not safe around appliances or knives? Is it that they can't be around their roommate without staff because they'll get into arguments and fights? Is that, what are the things we're looking at? What are the actual health and safety things? We look at those and then we determine based on those areas, are there technology solutions for them? Because it could be that some people have 24/7 supports because they need it, because there are health and safety items we can't solve for. And so we look at what are the different needs. If it comes down to because it's around medication, we can look around that. Is it because of falls? We can do fall detection, because just having staff there doesn't prevent a fall unless staff are carrying them everywhere. And then if that's what they need, then they clearly still need staff there. If it's because of a seizure disorder, is it a convulsive seizure? We can solve for and look at that. If it's a non-convulsive seizure, what are staff doing? How do they support it? Is there a way to support the same thing? Because staff might not be alerted to that either. It really looks at that. for us, again, coming from someone who is a provider, from an agency started by families 50 years ago, we still support a lot of those individuals. Health and safety is the baseline requirement. If we can't provide at least the same level of support, if not better, we don't do it. And so we would look at one-on-one with your individual, talk with you and say, what are the things that we've seen? What are the things we're concerned about? Are there solutions for those? If there are, can we try them? If there aren't, then we talk about, okay, there aren't solutions for these. So if we still need staff there, are there things that technology could increase their independence even while still having staff there? It's hard to answer for specific scenarios because health and safety is somewhat vague, but yeah, like for fire, like we can get obviously smart smoke alarms very easy. For a flood, smart water detection. For somebody coming into the house, cameras, smart locks, all those areas, like those things we use all day, every day, really high success.
Well, what kind of a response time do you have for things like that?
It depends on what the need is. So again, if they're, let's say,
For those emergency, that's my concern.
Yeah. So
About those emergency, the response time for somebody who doesn't even know what an emergency is, and the bathroom is flooding into the kitchen.
Yeah.
And she's by herself, so what happens?
good question. So in that scenario, the staff that are providing remote support would be alerted immediately once the water goes over the side. And then they would look at, can they coach the individual or not? Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't say, hey, you're flooding the bathroom, turn off the water, that kind of stuff. You may have to call in the backup support, and depending on the area, each person, we look at what is a non-emergency need. If it's an emergency where we would normally call fire, EMS, and police, the remote staff would call them just as the in-person staff would, and their response time is determined on whatever the local services are, 7 minutes or less, whatever it may be. If it's an in-person need, that's non-emergency, meaning we're not going to call emergency services, we look at what the needs of the individual are. Some people, it's, we have someone within if they live in an area where there's in-person staff within 5 minutes, it's 5 minutes. Some individuals that we support, because of their level of need and what we've shown, it could be 30 minutes, it could be 15, but there's always somebody close by depending on what their need is. And the way that we look at it around the clustering model too, so you think about if it's an apartment complex where there's 5 apartments in the complex of 400, and there's a staff member that's pretty much always there but bouncing around, or if it's there within 5 minutes of driving or 10 minutes of driving, there's little non-emergency need that we can't hit, because even if it's flooding and they can't turn it off, how we could get there within 5 minutes or 10 minutes and might do it if they can't. There is a scenario where we've had an individual where they couldn't do it, and then there's a technology we put on where he has, I don't know what it is, but he'll walk away from everything. He'll start boiling water, walk away from it. Turn on the tub, walk away from it. Turn on the dishwasher, never unload it, those kind of things. And so in his house, we have really easy technology that sits next to where the water comes in. When the water sensor goes off, if staff can't do it, they can turn it off remotely. It depends on the person's need, and it can go pretty deep. But again, for some people, it may not be a good fit. And what we always do is we try it first. We'll say, let's give it a while and see how it looks. Let's look at these health and safety. Let's try a few things. Let's turn on the tub and let it overflow a little bit, and have staff wait in the other room and see what happens. See if we can get them to turn it off. See if it will set it off. We won't flood the house. We might get a little water on the floor.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So do they have like alerts also, like, I can tell you what that, if the water was too hot, you can start screaming.
Yeah.
And so somebody would need to coach them through it,
Yeah.
like, okay, turn it off,
So if that's somebody's response, and that we see a lot,
Yeah.
there's a decibel sensor. So I don't know if anyone stayed in an Airbnb in the last 3 years. 90% of those have a decibel sensor in them, and if you have a party, it alerts the person in the house very quickly. It's how I learned about them, because we were looking at different tech that existed, found a sensor that can pick up a decibel and you can set it to anything. I was walking, I was like, how does this work? He's like, well, how many Airbnbs do you have? How many? I'm like, I don't have any Airbnbs. What are you talking about? But that's what they're typically used for. We just use them in a different way. And so if we have a response where that is how they respond. We have an individual who, when he gets really upset, that's what he does. That's how staff knew, hey, it's time to get in there and intervene, or else he's gonna get more agitated.
Yeah.
We have another individual who, when he's agitated, he paces. And so we train staff to wait for him to start pacing and then intervene and give him something else to do. But with the motion sensors, we can pick up excessive motion. You can turn on a camera for 2 seconds. Is it this guy or is it someone else? And then we can call him and say, hey, you remember pacing doesn't work, let's try to redirect. Or his thing is music will redirect him. They just turn on remotely sometimes and that will just shut it down. So it really depends on what it is. Again, there's a solution for almost everybody. It doesn't always work for everybody. The goal is to use whatever exists off the shelf that we can and piece it together. And we learn about new things all the time. There's a new device that I just found out about a month ago that it's a smart stove knob. We've been trying to solve stoves in 40 different ways and how do we just shut it off? And someone else developed a knob that has a little motor in it, connects to Wi-Fi. They're like anywhere, you can just turn a stove knob off, any knob in the world, it just sits right on there. And you can also set it to where if there's no motion in front of the stove for a period of time, it shuts itself off. You can set a timer and all these different things, that all of a sudden, we're not removing stoves just because someone can't cook.
Yeah.
So, or pulling out a stove and putting in one with an induction top, because we know that prevents burns, that kind of stuff.
Amazing.
And that's like, I mean, that thing's less than a year old. And it just is gonna continue to get better. And not necessarily because we need it. It's gonna get better because everybody else wants it. That's gonna, the market is driving that. And so, again, I would say the majority of our technology, we get off of Amazon because it's gonna keep it at a good price, but also the supply chain is pretty solid with Amazon. The reason why Amazon made a ton of money during COVID, you do anything on Amazon, you still can. Things we can, we go with the companies that we know are gonna be sustainable, that don't break down into supply issues. We always have extras on hand. Screen goes down, place it out. It's that simple.
Yeah.
I have it in my house too. I mean, I'll be honest with you, because we gotta test everything out. Smart toothbrushes, I put 34 of them in my mouth. The best one is at Target. I mean, it's cheap. It'll tell you exactly when, how long, how well, and each tooth you brush. You can go back and now we're actually teaching people, hey, you're only not brushing these 4 teeth. Let's work on that. Rather than saying, okay, we're gonna give the DSP a sticker chart, and every time someone brushes their teeth, we give a piece of candy. Yeah. Oral-B, I don't get anything from, I don't sell any technology. Oral-B comes with an app and gamifies toothbrushing. But I use it with my own kids. I mean, I'm never worried about leaving my kids home alone, so I use the same technology. They're 12, 10, and 9. I'm more worried that like a neighbor's gonna call and be like, these kids are alone a lot. Like, yeah, but I know what they're doing all the time. Like, they can't get away with anything. And that's the thing, is we just know it works. And it's not anything, if you have technology in your home, you're gonna walk into a house like, well, this doesn't look any different than the stuff I already have. It's not, it doesn't have to be any different, it's just the way we use it.
So what does the training look like between the people that
use it?
or
the
that
staff?
install it?
Yeah, it's extensive. Yeah, we do a lot of training, and we train them how to train their stuff. Yeah, so for the individuals, yeah, we have a training protocol and a tool, like, OTs, they don't like to be around people for very long and train. They also love building tools and how to like measure different things. So we have a tool based around training on the technology. So when we install it, we train the individuals on how to use it. They have to go through and show us they can use different functions. We know where they're at. And then we reinforce that. We go back and do more training. We don't go anywhere near touching how they interact with their typical staff until they can meet baseline criteria. And then we check in every 3 months for the first year. Is it getting better? Can we add more? We always start with the basic health and safety, that add in more health and wellness, add in more just fun stuff, or maybe more sensory stuff, that kind of stuff. The staff, we have training we do it with the whole agency. We're doing some tomorrow. We do it for the staff that are delivering services. To teach them, hey, I don't need to train you on how to work in a call center. We actually don't hire call center employees. We want to hire DSPs who want to deliver the same level of support just through technology. And so we train them on how to respond. We have been able to work with platforms to connect devices together. So if you get an alert that, hey, there's movement in this part of the house at this time, you can click on it and get your feet of the house to determine what to do. That kind of stuff. And then we continuously update it. We're continuously training staff on how do you get better at your job. Empathy training, again, is a yearly required portion of, if an agency wants to work with me, I just make them agree to it. I mean, they can stop, I guess, anytime. I have no way of enforcing this. But I think it's really important because it makes a difference. And then we train family members who want to be a part of it. Say, hey, you want to be able to communicate through their touchscreen as well? Hey, let's download the app onto your phone. I'm going to teach you how to use it. You want to know how their med dispenser works? I'll teach you how to use it. So when you're there, you can help and support it. If you want to be the one that I send the dental record reports to, and you want to train them on how to brush their teeth better, you betcha. There you go. All these different areas. And again, the goal is not to say, okay, we have tech, so we're just going to find a way to use it. So let's be meaningful about it. Now let's make sure they can use it right. We have ways of making sure it works, and again, the individuals we're here to talk about as well, they would tell you, they get annoyed with how much we make them show us again, okay, now, call this person, okay, now do this, okay, we're gonna build in these different areas, we have an individual, we serve a higher number of people that have Down syndrome than any other population where we're at, our agency does, how it was, we were set up by a Down syndrome association. And we're finding that due to amazing medical reaches, they are living typically age lives, but the majority are getting dementia at a very early age, and it's going very fast. And so what we've done is we've used the technology to take pictures of tasks people need to do of themselves doing it, and now it's helping them keep those skills longer. But they get super annoyed because I keep going back and say, okay, show me how to do this. Like, I know how to do it. I'm like, cool, show me that. Well, I am going to say, I know you have other things you want to cover. I've probably already taken too much time. That is my MO, guys, just so you know. These guys put up with all the time. But this is not your only chance to ask questions. If you have more, reach back out. We can share more information. We can talk through. If you have individual scenarios where this is like, hey, if you're like, hey, this doesn't feel right for me right now, that's fine. That's totally cool. But if you're like, hey, I'm interested, but I have these really specific questions, let's talk about those specific questions too. I'm out here a lot, but I also can meet over Zoom or phone calls all the time to talk about that with the team, bring them on board and talk them through it and say, here's what we look at in that scenario. But I'd say just kind of be open to it. Know that, again, our bottom line is to provide supports. And so that's what we're going to be focused on. How do we do it better? How do we always do it better? If someone has better solutions that don't involve technology, I'd love to see those too. We're always looking for new things. And sometimes when we talk about technology, it's nothing you plug in. You know, if I have somebody, we have one house where all three ladies, none of them are above 5 feet tall. And so we were finding that we were having broken knobs on the cupboards all the time and a lot of falls because they couldn't reach the cabinets. And so a really cheap retrofit cabinet that pulls down, you might have seen one of the video, that's a technology piece. It doesn't plug in anything, there's no batteries, but now they can pull their whole cabinet down, grab what they need, put it back out. So, you know, it's stuff like that, you know, different devices. It doesn't have to just be, okay, how does this plug into the internet? There's a lot of different stuff out there as well.
If someone that that doesn't need the tech so much as the hands-on, that cannot read or write. They don't need, you know, something technically to help them, but one-on-one nurture with them to encourage what is already Independent Rose does very well on her own, but she needs, you know, her home life is not healthy, it's not safe. So we're working on that, and that is, so we're coming in the back way. We're trying to get her independence as a community versus trying to get, because she is, now she's needing it and hasn't had this opportunity. So we're coming in with backwards on it. But as far as is it with a home with the people, with two people, or is it apartment? How's the roommates?
For the technology side, we put it in every scenario you can think of. Individuals' homes, apartments, houses, parents' homes. For the nurturing side, we look at what can we do through technology. Could we do some of that coaching and prompting, but there's still the human touch still. So how much of that do we need to build in? What is the balance? Does anybody really need 24 hours a day of in-person coaching? Probably not. But what is that balance? And so we build that in.
Yes. She tells me to. So
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Brian, very much. We are going to stop.